Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, nasally voice and all. Apologies in advance if you hear my cough drop, kind of hitting my teeth and whatnot here, slurping, hacking, and whatnot. Got a little bit of a cold, a little under the weather, but as per the usual, I am joined by my good buddy here, a Roger Murtaugh to my Martin Riggs, a one Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, you got my reference there?
Fly me to the moon and let me sail among the stars. Now, I know that Danny Glover doesn't do that, but, you know, what the hell? It was old music.
Well, we were just off the air. I was like, you know, are you ready? I'm ready. I'm ready. You ready? You ready? We were both doing kind of the Leo Getz, the Joe Pesci character from Lethal Weapon there. And it just gave me the idea, you know, we would be good buddy cops here.
We would.
It would work out
as long
good.
as we don't do the Leo Getz reference about the drive-thru, we're safe.
Oh, well, you know, they screw you in the drive-thru all the time, man.
That's not what he says.
I know it's not what he says, but it's as close as we could get here. I was just thinking that you're too old for this stuff. That's why I gave you Danny Glover, because I think we're both kind of crazy, like the Riggs character that Mel Gibson portrays. So
yeah, I'll buy that.
You're ready to retire? I don't know, man. I'm like, the Steelers aren't packing it in. We got some miscellaneous news, almost like a potpourri. We're going to focus on some things here with the depth chart going forward and some of the injuries that they're dealing with. But first, want to welcome aboard. We got a brand new sponsor, Brian. FanDuel.
We do?
Yes, we are now presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Typically our pregame shows, but we start on the bye week, so be sure to check them out. We have a special offer for you coming up later in this program that you folks may be interested in, particularly if you're in Pennsylvania or New Jersey, where you could take advantage of the old sports betting right now, just like yourself, Brian.
Yeah, I look forward to taking advantage of giving them my money.
Hey, every now and then it'll work. Hey, if you bet on the Steelers were, 7-point underdogs, against the Chargers.
True.
And, that's something where, I gotta point this out first. I was going to do this second because there was something else that was completely complete insanity, lunacy, whatever you want to call it. But I'll get to that one in a minute. There's a lot of people that were, what do you want to say, down on the Steelers, offensive line, quarterbacks getting hurt, inability to run the football, et cetera, et cetera. And there was some of that coming around because, remember, Mike Munchak jumped ship. He left the sinking ship. Do you remember that whole quotation?
Yes.
Okay, so staying on that storyline, sorry, I'm trying not to cough into the microphone here. It wasn't a dramatic pause. It was a necessary pause. There was a game last night where a quarterback, he used to be elite. He didn't look so elite, and I think it's just because, we make fun of Andy Dalton not having any protection whatsoever with the Bengals horde offensive line. Joe Flacco took 8 sacks last night against the Kansas City Chiefs defense that's, I would say so-so. I understand they have some pass rushers like Frank Clark, so I'm not going to completely disregard their ability to get after the quarterback. But holy cow, not only is the line, maybe they just don't have the talent, but there's also, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be a scheme there either. I mean, I'm not going to totally rag on Mike Munchak, but it doesn't look like he's done a very effective job with what he's been given in Denver, as you may as well call them piñatas instead of quarterbacks. Flacco himself has taken 23 sacks so far in 7 games. And overall, there's a punter that actually got hit yesterday, and that kind of counted for a sack too. So they've given up 24 overall this season, as opposed to the Steelers, who've only given up 5 with their plethora of 3 quarterbacks, and then Jalen Samuels, even in the Wildcat, hasn't taken a sack. Duck Hodges didn't take a sack against the Chargers. Ben took 2, in a game and a half, and Mason Rudolph has only taken 3, with basically appearing in 4 games. I guess you could call it like 3 because it's like 2 halves of 2 different games. So what, like 12 quarters of football, and he's only been taken down 3 times. And it's just something that I wanted to point out, because the people who bring these type of things up, and it's the knee-jerk reaction after maybe 1 game or anything like that. Looking at the larger picture, I don't see how the Broncos or Mike Munchak are going to do any better there. Well, it appears the Steelers, whatever issues they may have had, now they're starting to gel and get better.
Yes, absolutely. I don't look. Remember that when Munchak first came to the Steelers, it wasn't like an instant turnaround. It took some time. And so he's got to teach his principles to guys who haven't seen, or worked with him before. And he's, while I think the Denver group can be good, they're probably changing their scheme to a certain extent, changing what they're doing. And you've got Mr. Elite in the backfield or a back end there, with Joe Flacco, and I don't know. I'm not ready to say that Munchak has screwed the pooch there yet. But they're not astounding anybody at the moment. And the Steelers' offensive line, based on recent results, certainly has improved. And I think we can look for that to continue throughout the rest of the year as they get used to things and what they're doing, and just see a consistent level of upgrade to their play. And I think Sean Surratt's been doing a good job, so it's all good.
Yeah, take a look at who the Steelers have faced as far as defenses too. They gave up. Ben got sacked only once by the Patriots. The Seahawks got to Ben once, and I want to say they also they actually didn't get the Rudolph at all. San Francisco got the Rudolph twice, and Baltimore, of course, got to him once, and then a very dirty hit as well. So I think the offensive line woes, I got to keep knocking on wood here because there is a theme in this show, and I'm not going to say anything further. So We'll just move on from that because we don't want to be talking about injuries. I was about to say, hey, they've been intact with no problems, and I don't want to, jinx anything here. So moving on, there was one other, the absurd thing I wanted to talk about. It wasn't necessarily the Munchak thing. That was just something that was like a carryover, overblown storyline from earlier in the year when everyone was, leaving the sinking ship. Oh, Le'Veon Bell doesn't want anything to do with this team because it's trash. Antonio Brown once traded. This whole dumpster fire Tomlin. This is all his fault, et cetera, et cetera. And then you see what goes on with everything else. And, we should point out that Le'Veon Bell isn't setting the world on fire either with the New York Jets. And I understand, Sam Darnold's been out, and that's a huge blow, but he hasn't been able to shoulder the load there either, as we kind of maybe surmised. Statistically, him and Connor are kind of in the same dumps right now. But we'll see what happens going forward. There's still a lot of football to play. But I thought, those type of things are worth pointing out for the naysayers that, they're happy. They're kind of like, I don't even want to call them like the armchair or Monday morning quarterbacks. I'm not sure that some of these folks even watch the games or understand what they're watching when they see the games. It's just win good, loss bad, you know what I mean? And that's about their extent of the football knowledge there. This also goes hand in hand with a one player that some people are talking about. It's always, one man's trash is another man's treasure, Brian. And I don't know if I want to call him necessarily trash at this point, but people that are asking or inquiring about the services of a Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver who has yet to step on the field this year may be surprised by our take of saying, well, I don't know that we would want A.J. Green on this roster for a should I use plethora? Plethora here may be a good, I love the word plethora, but there's a plethora of reasons that A.J. Green would not be a very suitable fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Salary aside, he's, he's in a contract year this year, and his base salary is like $12 million. His cap hits 15 over there in Cincinnati. So the Steelers just don't have cap space, even without the signing bonus or any workout bonuses that are included in this that would already be fronted by the Bengals. They don't have room to put somebody like this on their roster not only salary-wise, but actual roster spots because he's hurt. Who are they going to take off, and who can they have space? They still have James Washington nursing a shoulder, and you hope he's back for the next game after the bye. He was caught in a sling. They saw him in a sling the day after the last game. Not even the Chargers game, the Ravens game. And it's like, okay, they could afford to waste a roster spot and, roughly $12 million in salary cap space for this guy. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. This is not only that. And I was speaking with the Bengals fan sitting having a drink at a bar just yesterday. And we were talking, a very nice gentleman, too. I mean, we were talking football, like back and forth. Nothing like, trash talk, smack talk. It was just, man, the Bengals are really bad. And it really caught my eye with we were talking Ohio State, too. So at least we had that in common. So we were able to, clang glasses and cheers over that. But anyhow, he's just like, well, you think they could trade A.J. Green? I'm like, no, he's 31 years old. Isn't that the magic number we've talked about? And he hasn't played very many games. I mean, okay, he played 9 games last year. He played a full season in 2017. Before that, in 2016, he missed 6 games. So over the course of the last, what are we in now? Like week 7, and he's probably going to miss this upcoming game too. So we'll say he already missed 6, and he missed 7 the year before. So that's 13 if my math is correct. And then another 6 it gets you to 19, right? So he's missed 19 games in the last 4 seasons. And he's 31, which is the fall off the cliff age that we see with these wide receivers, regardless of talent. I can't see any team wanting to give any kind of draft picks for a guy that's 31 and has a $12 million cap hit.
No, it's just not going to happen. I look. A team with tons of cap space that can give up the second, third, maybe even 4th round pick and is willing to do so just because they figure, why not? Sure, but not the Steelers. They don't have, as we said, they don't have the cap room. But secondarily to that, this isn't a group that is necessarily going to be improved by adding a injury-prone, elder statesman wide receiver. Yes, A.J. Green was a great talent, a potentially Hall of Fame talent, who unfortunately was forced to squander his talent in Cincinnati.
With Andy Dalton, no less.
Yeah, with the red rifle. And I got to say something about old Andy Dalton here in a second. But it's just not a great fit. First of all, with the way things are right now, you got 2 quarterbacks who the offensive structure around is to limit the amount of times they're going to push the ball downfield. So how much are they going to actually be able to utilize an A.J. Green? Probably not a lot. So it's not a great fit. Now, here's the thing I wanted to say about Andy Dalton, who has apparently been venturing out of the football spectrum because my family enjoys watching American Ninja Warrior.
I watch that from time to time.
And we watched that the Cincinnati episode, and of course, there was good old Andy Dalton up on the podium sharing cheers for local hometown heroes. And what I thought was the most appropriate is that the guy he came in to support, he splashed almost immediately. It was like, the curse of the red rifle. Don't get Andy Dalton up there cheering for you. You're screwed.
Isn't that like the Drake thing? That's going to be like the equivalent. Like Drake shows up to like basketball games or whatever, and then these teams lose. So it's it's kind of an equivalent there, I think. But yeah, anyways, it's like, okay, no AJ Green, no Mike Munchak type things. This is and even speaking with the Mike Munchak thing, this is really a case of what our kind of theme is for this episode is the next man up. And the Steelers have had to deal with a lot of next man up, particularly the quarterback position already this season. You take a look at, the Broncos were just a dumpster fire, but, they already spotted the Chiefs some points last night, but they bring in Matt Moore. How confident would you feel as a Chiefs fan or even, Andy Reid and that team with Matt Moore, a guy who was out of football last year entirely, he's going to be the signal caller instead of Patrick Mahomes, who was the MVP of the league. You know what I mean? And it's also, the reason I'm bringing up this game, there's a lot of different things that kind of tie in. Randy Fichtner took a lot of heat for talking about quarterback sneaks, and how did Mahomes get hurt? Quarterback sneak. Oh my, you know what I mean? And some people are like, well, it's a freak accident. Well, no, it's a risk that you take that the Steelers have been unwilling to risk with their $30-some million quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, or lo and behold, now you don't have the depth. Are you really going to risk it even more with a guy you're trying to develop as your young quarterback? You want Mason Rudolph in there. And by the way, Mike Tomlin came out and basically said, hey, you know what? This guy's out of the protocol. He's our quarterback when he comes out of the protocol. And lo and behold, he's out of the protocol. So there was no doubts about that, I don't think, but we had to set some of that aside because people were talking about Duck this, Duck that. Duck is not the guy that they've invested all of this time, money, and effort into already to see if he's the future face of the franchise. And it's one of those things where if you lose Rudolph and all this potential, they're going into the bye. They played 6 games, so they still have 10 more to go. That's 10 more games of developing this guy at the NFL level, regardless of Roethlisberger's future with this team. And, if Rudolph goes back to the bench for a year or two, at least when he comes back off, he already has that under his belt. He already has that banked. And that's kind of the thing where, do you want to risk it by having this guy sneak? I understand the percentages on a sneak. It irritates me at times. But then when I see something like that happen, it's kind of like, well, it's like, and somebody said, oh, well, it was friendly fire or it was his own guy. And, well, duh, that's what happens. You know what I mean? That's the reason Marquise Pouncey doesn't play in the preseason anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, there's certain things that even if the risk is minimal, you're being exposed in certain ways. It's just not worth the risk.
Yeah. I agree.
That proves out.
I agree. And
well, good.
I mean, and then it's the same thing with, Duck Hodges when you're down to your last leg. It's like, okay, are you going to put him out there and have him, then what do you go to? Paxton Lynch? Is everyone still on the Paxton Lynch bandwagon or not? I mean, I remember he was the guy that everybody wanted to be the heir to Ben. And, it's some of these things where you have this curiosity. I call it like the, fantasy football or the Madden football curiosity. And, of course, there's the thing, too, Madden football and Mahomes. It's Madden curse thing,
yeah.
So
Madden curse, yep.
Man, it's crazy. It really is. It's like, if they offered it to me, of course, I'm not playing, so it wouldn't matter, but I would be on the cover. But if I were playing in the NFL, I would say thanks, but no thanks. Catch me when I retire. And then maybe even then you don't want that because maybe you get hit by a bus or something. So just stay away. Totally. Oh, so Paxton Lynch. It's like, you get these ideas in your head. You're like, I wonder what the Steelers would look like. Ben didn't do so hot in that first game, or you even think about it the year before, and it's like, what would this team look like with Mason Rudolph or Josh Dobbs, or when they had Michael Vick? And then when you actually get to see it, it comes to fruition. It's not kind of the thing that you really pictured in your head that you wanted, the manifestation of what you were thinking of, and it turns out to be something far worse. And in a lot of cases, you had the flip side of that where people were making fun of my boy, the GOAT Landry Jones, and it's like they don't want to see it. And then when they actually see something that's halfway decent, and it's like, oh my God, it's such a surprise. And it's like, you got to set the bar somewhere in the middle on these things. And you got to hope that you really don't want to see them because in most situations, this stuff doesn't play out very well. You know what I mean? Okay, Gardner Minshew is doing some stuff in Jacksonville. These type of things don't usually work out the way that you picture it in your head. It's just the way it's just the way of the world or whatever. And I'm trying to pull up some other stats here. So the Jacksonville Jaguars have the same exact record too. They were supposed to have Nick Foles. Who else is moving? Well, Mariota has just been not good, so they're moving on to Tannehill. I'm trying to see who else The Bills got Josh Allen out of that protocol pretty quick, but they would have been with Matt Barkley. That's not going to be so hot either. The Dolphins are flipping quarterbacks around. The Jets just got Darnold back, and then they had lost Simeon and went to Falk, their third-string guy. I mean, you see what this is like with a lot of these other teams, and it's just part of the AFC. Who else is moving around quarterbacks? Well, we just talked about the Chiefs potentially being in that situation. I don't know what the Broncos are going to do, if they're going to stick with Flacco or they're going to risk Drew Lock turning into Tim Couch and not being able to develop him because he's running for his life. That'll be interesting too, because we just said they have like no offensive line. They're 2-5. Do you want to see the future there and see if this guy's any good and see if you still have a quarterback problem? Because ever since Peyton Manning left there, it has not been good. And Brock Osweiler,
that is true.
Yeah, Brock Osweiler parlayed a couple of starts in place for Peyton Manning into, what was it, almost like 68 million, 70 million or whatever. And then he fizzled and faded in like a year or two and was gone. He couldn't even make the Cleveland Browns team the following year when they made that trade, which was basically just paying for a draft pick. But you look up and down all these other rosters, and it's just like the Redskins have problems. The Saints are maintaining the status quo. They're 5-1. And right behind them, hot on their heels, are the Panthers. Kyle Allen in for Cam Newton. Again, those are the things that, those contradict what we're usually saying. You have a couple different success stories here. I don't know if teams are more prepared or if teams got lucky with, I think part of it is when you have these young men come out of college and they play a lot of preseason and these injuries happen early in the year. Like if this injury with Ben would have happened like now, or let's say next week, because then you wouldn't have the bye week to prepare. Would Rudolph would he be as sharp? Maybe it's a compliment to the young men who step in and can play. But I think coming right off of having played a lot of football, reading a lot of defenses, making a lot of passes, I think it really behooves some of these younger quarterbacks. And then there's the case of, there's the guys who start right out the gate and maybe it's not as smooth, but then they're not on really great teams. I'm talking about Kyler Murray with the Arizona Cardinals, for example. We saw Dwayne Haskins struggle. I already mentioned the Redskins. And you see the Bears situation too, with Mitch Trubisky out. It's just, it's one thing or another here. Like, I was trying to find, it's Chase Daniel. Oh, there's a guy who made a lot of money, too, just going to be a backup a few seasons ago and then kind of fizzled out here or there. He's flashed, but he hasn't been, super impressive. So I think you get lucky sometimes. You may get luckier. Everybody we mentioned is like a younger player who fits that kind of mold as opposed to, some of these veterans that come in. Can Chase Daniel hold up the Chicago Bears? Can he maintain the status quo there? Can Matt Moore do it for the Chiefs? I mean, I don't know. But I don't know, Brian. I'll get your opinion on this. But I think that's the reason why you see it with some of the quarterbacks. And we went right out the gate with some of the next man up things. We're going to see Rudolph again. Duck Hodges will be the backup. I'll be surprised. Wait and see what the Steelers are going to do. I imagine Paxton Lynch is going to be cut and re-signed to the practice squad, and they're going to do something else because these injuries have really been killing them too because they've been shipping off guys like they shipped off Tuzar Skipper. They just lost Fred Johnson because they had to cut him, and I'm trying to remember the other guy. Well, you know what? That didn't really count because that was off the 90-man roster with Deontay Spencer. But he was returning kicks yesterday too. Phil, there was a depth thing there, and when you have to move some of these pieces, then you end up losing talent that you're developing in other spots.
Yeah, I know that. The professor and I are both upset that Fred Johnson got lost or let go. But at the same time, the circumstances dictate what you can and can't do. And there's only so much room on the team and the practice squad to fit anyone. Had they tried and re-signed Fred Johnson to the practice squad, I'm sure he would have gotten snatched up anyway. The Bengals, who are desperate for offensive linemen, you understand why these things happen. And it's clear. Let's make this clear to everyone. They intended to sign Tuzar Skipper to the practice squad. It's just that the Giants decided they didn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And they grabbed him off of waivers. So, that's the risk you take when you attempt to, play the game that NFL football sometimes is from a GM standpoint and management standpoint. It is what it is. Now, I don't know. As for you talked about Paxton Lynch. I don't know whether they'll cut him and re-sign him to practice squad this week or next week or not, or whether they're going to take a flyer and keep three quarterbacks because they don't need to make a roster move right now. And if they decide to do so, it won't surprise me. But if they decide not to, at least initially, that won't surprise me too, until and unless they feel comfortable that Mason is completely fine. They may want to hold on to Paxton Lynch just as an emergency precaution. And we'll see. He's cleared. Obviously, we know that Mason's cleared. But as I mentioned the other day, you still don't know how he's going to react to that kind of an injury and that kind of a hit. So it won't surprise me if Paxton Lynch is just inactive for the game, but is kept on the 53-man just as a precaution, especially with the way, knock on wood, these injuries have been going.
Well, they had promoted Lynch and then Trey Edmonds because of, Connor and Samuels is still out. They're short on running back, so I don't think Edmonds will be going anywhere. But the guys they let go, Fred Johnson picked up. Jaron Elliott is still floating around out there. And then, of course, one of the moves they made, I guess the biggest thing with the next man up, I guess we could talk about running back real quick since it's right here, but, they may want to bring Jaron Elliott back in just for some special teams help. I think Trey Edmonds will still be there because of the injury with Jalen Samuels, and we don't know how serious James Conner is, and he's had some injury troubles over the last few years, and I think they're going to want to keep him fresh, and in doing so, you got to keep Benny Snell fresh too, and I don't know if you want Benny Snell to be doing all this special team stuff as well, so I think that's where Trey Edmonds, and let's face it, I think Trey Edmonds actually has some potential to maybe move the chains here or there. He just has a log jam of guys in front of him that are incredibly talented players, so and there's no misprint here that is one of the Edmonds brothers. He is related to Terrell and Tremaine of the Buffalo Bills as well. So that's just looking at the running back standpoint. It's like, geez, is there anything the Steelers can do here where there's somebody that doesn't get banged up? I mean, we hit most of the offense already, right? James Washington, you're going to keep an eye on him. We talked about Dante Moncrief's hand. We knocked on wood already with the offensive line. Let's not say anything there. Vance McDonald, another guy, he got beat up. Xavier Grimble went to injured reserve. We don't know the mystery of that. And then injury settlement too, right? They just straight let him go after that. So then they made a trade in order to have Nick Vannett. So they pretty much have the full complement of everything but the offensive line has been hit upon on the offense, and we still haven't seen Rosie Nix yet this year either. It's wild, man. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's like they're snake bitten, and we haven't even gotten to the defense yet. But before we do, I do want to talk about the FanDuel Sportsbook. And for those of you folks out there that are interested in doing this, I know the Steelers aren't playing this weekend, but there are some other intriguing games that might, light your fire, and you may want to give this a shot, or you may want to put some money on that Steelers-Dolphins game, the following Monday Night Football game. We'll see what that opens up as. That's going to be interesting. But the FanDuel Sportsbook here is offering a $500 risk-free bet to new users. And, that may sound like an amazing deal, but it's just the beginning because FanDuel also is offering some other promotions, and they're pretty much on a daily basis. Anytime you could find odds boosts, bet insurance, special bonuses, and more. And plus, there's a new cash out feature that, it makes it a lot easier to take out your winnings as opposed to being in other places. Now, I know some people are kind of thinking to themselves, well, how would I be able to do this? I said, the Pennsylvania or New Jersey, you want to download the app, obviously. And, it's as simple as this. If you're going to the Steelers game, you're going to be in Pennsylvania, right? So you could do it right then and there. You could do it while you're tailgating. You could do it while you're relaxing in your hotel room the night before. And if you happen to go in and you want to place that $500 risk-free bet, then you could use the promo code SCU. That's, there's no coincidence there. It's Steel City Underground if you forget it. So SCU, you can sign up. It's very simple. It's very easy to add money to your account, and also we were talking about withdrawing that money. I think that's one of the coolest things too, because it's not one of these places. You used to have to worry about all the offshore type betting stuff and things like that. Brian, is this place in the Isle of Man going to shut down on me? It's a little more secure. You could get your money a little earlier as the game goes on. You could get different offers to cash out on your bet before the game ends. So, I mean, this is really kind of like a revolutionary type deal here with the FanDuel Sportsbook. And I think it's pretty cool, if you happen to, folks, if you sign up with that promo code SCU and you make your first bet within 7 days, if you lose, the FanDuel Sportsbook will give you a refund and site credit of up to $500. So you're still playing with some house money there, up to that $500. So I mean, why not? You give it a shot. You could download the FanDuel Sportsbook app now, or you could visit FanDuel.com/sportsbook to claim your risk-free bet up to $500 with promo code SCU. I think I said it a few times here, Brian, SCU, but a very cool thing. And hey, again, if you go and visit Brian in New Jersey, you could take advantage of it too.
Absolutely. And if you do, while I'm not a huge gambling man, every now and then I do like to place a bet. And I kind of, looking at what is upcoming, that Houston-Indianapolis game, I kind of like the under on that.
Yeah, that's looking pretty good too, man. I mean, there's always stuff, and I know some people like to dabble here or there, a few bucks here, a few bucks there, or if you're a high roller, hey, go for it, you know what I mean? And you could buy me and Brian some surf and turf while you're at it when you win, too.
Absolutely.
So use SCU, and don't forget, this is the first online wager only. Refund issued as site credit. Site credit expires after 14 days. I wish I could do the blah, 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 blah fast, like the disclaimer people, but these are the things we have. We have to mention this. It's just it goes with the territory, Go to Sportsbook. Sportsbook.fanduel.com for full terms. You must be 21 or older and present in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, and if you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Spelled out 1-800-GAMBLER. So very excited to have the FanDuel Sportsbook with us almost for the duration of the season. And, tune in too. Me and Brian are going to be playing around with this a little bit too. It's a very neat app. It's something that's it's brand spanking new now that they opened up the legislation and stuff. New Jersey was the first, and now Pennsylvania has come on board. And there's other areas. I can't discuss these things just yet, but for some of you other folks that are like, well, I'm not going to be in either of those spots or areas anytime soon, well, just hold your horses and then get your bonus later on, because it's going to be offered for most of the season, or there's going to be other offers that come up, and there's going to be other states that are going to be opening up to this as well. So in saying all of that, next man up on defense. We don't have to say anything with special teams. Keep doing that.
Let's just keep that way. Yep.
I mean, Stephon Tuitt's the big one. LT Walton was floating around there. He's a guy who stepped in to help spell when Cam Hayward had a very similar injury several years ago. I think he got like 3 sacks that year. I think it was mostly the month of December that he really came on and was playing. I think he had like 5 or 6 starts. I could tell you this in a second. It's not like somebody. It's one of these things where it's like somebody comes off the street. But I don't know. He's not necessarily stepping straight into that full role like a Sean Spence had to come in and start. He's going to be like a rotational guy and a special teams guy. They already have Isaiah Buggs, who they drafted, but he's been inactive all year. So I'm going to be interested to see like how he might fit, because he was kind of like a Hargrave type prototype in that he could play maybe nose and or end. So we're going to see what happens there. But you have a former first round draft pick, 10th overall when he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's been with this team 3-4 years now. Tyson Alu. He's a veteran guy. We saw him make some plays even just in that last Sunday night football game. It's not Stephon Tuitt, who was starting to really turn the corner and look like, a terror out there. But I don't think the boat's going to sink. I think it's going to maintain its position with Alu there. And even if you have Walton's kind of cycling in to spell one or several of these guys.
Yeah, I'm going to throw another name into that pot, because I think this is an opportunity for a young man who's in a contract year himself.
Yes.
And that would be Mr. J-Wobble, Javon Hargrave. This is an opportunity for him to prove he can be more than just an over-the-center nose tackle kind of guy. And I think he's got the hops to do it. He's got a burst and quickness off the snap that is elite. And he's already proved, even as a nose tackle, that he can get to the quarterback at times. So this is an opportunity, and it's probably going to be a necessity that he is going to sometimes spell those guys at that position. And while, again, nobody's Stephon Tuitt, who arguably has probably been the best defensive lineman they've had this year overall, and that's not saying that anybody else, like the grown-ass man himself, Cam Hayward, has slacked off, because they haven't. But Tuitt has really started to reach that, or appeared to have really started to reach that potential that's always been there. And it's a really unfortunate thing that this injury occurred. But I think Tyson Alualu will be a completely serviceable part in this process. But I think Javon Hargrave has the opportunity, and if he takes advantage of it, can show a lot here, benefit himself down the road. Again, I don't think the Steelers are going to necessarily be able to re-sign him if he has a great season. But at the same time, look, if this is not something he's capable of, who knows at the end of the day. But I think this is an opportunity for that young man.
Oh, yeah. I didn't want to steal your thunder and throw that out there, but just to, the facts are the facts. He's going to have an uptick in playing time, and we've seen it before when there's been some injuries. Now, let's talk about this. Stephon Tuitt, over the course of 6 games, these are the percentage shares that he's played with defense, and this is the Steelers playing against some teams that, have been running a lot of plays. So he was cycling out a lot. We're talking about New England week 1. You're in the whereabouts of the Chargers game. The Chargers only ran 60 plays, which is the fewest of any of the opponents, the 6 opponents the Steelers have faced so far. New England ran 70, but quite a bit of that was in the first 3 quarters. You had Seattle run 79, as did San Francisco, and the Bengals ran 69. Nice. And then the Ravens ran 79. So that's kind of weird. You had 3 games where there's been 79 total snaps. Now, as a share, Tuitt has played 66%, 71, 66. And then against the Bengals and Ravens, 80 and 84 before only being able to muster 5, snaps or plays against the Chargers before exiting the game. And that's where we saw already an uptick in play from Hargrave, because Hargrave was playing 37, 48, 58, 41, 49, and then 63. So he already saw his largest share over the course of the season just in Tuitt leaving. So they were already kind of showed their hand when it comes to this. On the flip side, it's not like Alualu hasn't been playing, because where you have Hayward, Cam Hayward had been playing, 3/4 of the game, half a game against the Bengals. His most have been 85 and then 79% the last 2 games, where Alualu has been in 41, 24, 44, 29, 19, and then back up to 40. So Alualu is anywhere from a quarter to half a game playing already, where he's part of those plans. So you're going to see maybe the guys might not be as fresh up front. You're going to have Tuitt's snap counts basically replaced by Alualu, maybe playing another 5 to 10, and Hargrave maybe playing 5 to 10 more snaps at that defensive end position. That's just not going to have Hargrave as healthy as a nose tackle, but we already saw Dan McCullers starting to play a little more too, and he did play a lot more when they played against the 49ers. I mean, the guy played a quarter of the game. This is a guy that was getting in, if he was lucky, getting in for one play. Over the course of almost, quite frankly, his entire career up until last year, we finally saw him a little bit, a snap or 2 or 3 or something like that, right? And I think he's going to be the guy that's going to have to be counted on to come in and, basically play that traditional nose while Hargrave plays on the side.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And Dan has, Big Dan has played much better, and is he's a man mountain. He's definitely a grown ass guy, and he can fill in those spots to free Hargrave up to take some of those snaps. And as you said, I wouldn't discount that LT Walton's going to get some rotation in. They're going to try and do the best they can do to keep these guys fresh, and they need to, because that can help prevent injury, and it helps keep the intensity of that defense up throughout the game.
Now, just going over to the linebackers, too, I mean, they've had problems here. They've had problems everywhere. I mean, Vince Williams missed how much time? He missed like 3 games? Let me see. I got it here. Well, a better part of almost 3 games. So he played not very infrequently against the Patriots. I think that was some of the scheme of trying to slow them down with Barron and also kind of limiting Bush's playing time maybe. I mean, Bush played 3/4 of the game, but there were certain situations they may not have wanted him in. They want to, Vince Williams is thought of as the run stopper, but I feel like the defense has been a lot better since he's been back. He came back against the Ravens, had a huge impact. He's playing about maybe a little over half of the game in that linebacker spot. And, you're seeing a few other guys kind of mix in here or there, like a Tyler Matakevich. But Devin Bush, by far, almost doesn't come off the field now. And he played a full game against the 49ers and the Bengals, some of it out of necessity. Mark Barron has played some full games, too, also out of necessity. Of course, he got hurt against the Ravens, missed the Chargers game. We're going to see how that's going to play out. We also have to throw Anthony Chickillo out there as one of the outside linebackers that's missed. He missed 3 total games, and he went down in that Seahawks game, so he almost missed 4 games. I want to say he went down maybe in the first quarter or the early second quarter of that game as well. It's madness, man, because, I mean, we were all fearing, too, that TJ Watt got banged up in the last game, and it's just like, holy cow, man. I mean, you only have so many bodies to go around, and guys are starting to drop like flies. We haven't even gotten to the secondary yet where they've had some problems, too, but hopefully, you keep the inside linebackers. I think, as long as one of these guys is healthy between Watt and Dupree, you're going to cycle in Chickillo some anyways. You got Ola, who you're trying to develop, but it gets really scary when you start to thin the herd there and you lose 2 of these guys because there's really only 4 dedicated kind of edge rusher type outside linebackers on the roster right now. And J-Ron Elliott was that other one that just kind of, he came along because they weren't able to retain the services of Skipper, who had an awesome preseason. I kind of fear it's just like the bye week couldn't have come at a better time. And like I said, we still have to talk about the secondary too.
Yeah, there's no question. TJ Watt was one of the most concerning potential issues because, again, he is continuing to elevate his play, playing at a very high level. And there's only so much that the next man up actually works for. When your entire team, or what feels like your entire team, has become the next man up, you got problems, and there's just no getting around them. This has been a very rough season from the injury front, much more so than in seasons past. And let's hope that this bye week helps everybody get off of the walking wounded list, get back into shape, and that we have experienced enough of our share that we don't get hit with it further on. Where's my wood? I got to knock on it again.
Yeah, I know. And right out the gate too was Sean Davis not playing in that game against the Patriots. You got Cam Kelly, who God bless him, but he wasn't really the guy to throw out there in his first game against Tom Brady. And, I guess he's better than anything else they had because they didn't throw, Jordan Dangerfield's played 1 snap on defense all season. He's just considered basically just special teams type guy. Davis came back against the Seahawks and then got hurt again. It's a significant injury because here's a guy who had played pretty much every snap of the last 3 seasons, entering a contract year in his 4th year, and is on injured reserve. I haven't heard any update on him and whether or not he's going to be capable of returning. He would certainly bolster what they have now. It's the reason they went after with the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, because they had some problems. They thought Davis was going to be healthy, right? So they get him back week 2. Let's weather the storm with Cam Kelly, and then it's like, well, this is looking really bad. Here's a potential playmaker. I think we mentioned this on the last show too. Here's like a guy that's this is a guy that has potential to be a great player. And even though it was a first-round pick and then a little bit of pocket change with the other picks that got traded back and forth, it's a heck of a deal when you consider here's a guy that's on his second year. He's still got 3 years left, and he was a first-round pick with a potential fifth-year option. You got all of this contract left. We were just talking about AJ Green. He has a contract year. You trade for him. What are you trading? You're not going to trade a first-round or a second-round pick for a guy that then you have to re-sign to a large money deal at age 32. And even the Jalen Ramsey thing, you know what I mean? That's what the whole thing's been. His gripe is he wants, show me the money, Jerry. You know what I mean? Down in Jacksonville. Oh, my back hurts, and all these other things that are going on in order to, get yourself out of there. And I think that's going to be a huge sticking point when they get to this new CBA, kind of the I'm going to complain or sit out and try and get traded deal. You saw Melvin Gordon attempt that. We saw AB do it and then do it more than once. It's like, I don't like what I'm doing, so release me. You know what I mean? Trade me. And but you look at what the Rams gave up there with their what was it, 2 first-round picks? Man, I don't know. And a guy that you still have to pay, and they're still paying Marcus Peters. They just gave him like a big healthy contract the year before when they traded for him too. And I get what they're trying to do there. They want some top flight corners, and they got to keep Talib that's hurt right now too. But I mean, you look at what the Steelers have and the way they work with this. You have a young man that you're going to have for several years. Essentially, is spending your pick a little earlier, getting Christmas early, and that was necessitated too because of the injury to Davis, but you also had injuries to Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden, where now your secondary has like Artie Burns, Cam Sutton, and then it's Minka Fitzpatrick, not Minica, and Terrell Edmonds. I was drawing a blank. And then, of course, Mike Hilton also playing primarily in the nickel corner. He's been splitting some time with Sutton, or they've both been on the field at the same time, or Cam Kelly's out there too. And this just isn't like, that last game. That's not what you pictured coming into this. And it's like, okay, we talked about all these different injuries. 3, 4, 5 guys on offense. You have 3, 4, 5 guys on defense too. It's just, there's only 11 on each side as far as your starters. You may have quality depth like a guy here or there, but you know what? That's the reason why some of these guys are depth and not starters, unless they're, a young player that just hasn't had an opportunity to play yet. I mean, it's just the expectation of always having the next man up, being able to fit in like the round peg in the round hole and complete the puzzle. It doesn't always work out that way, and you may need a few games, even if they do end up being a guy that's capable. You need that time in order to gel, and that's why you see the Steelers defense start to really rise right here. Not only some of the guys that were getting healthy and coming back like Vince Williams, but you also see they're starting to play together, and some of the guys that are new like Minka, they're getting time together, they're getting comfortable together, and now they're able to execute. And that's also the same problem Mason Rudolph had on offense, et cetera, et cetera. It just really sucks that you have to be like next man up when the Steelers are already in a hole at 2-4.
Yeah, it's a tough road for them to hoe. I will say this, and we said this early on in the season as things started to unhinge. This is a challenge for this coaching staff, and if in fact they can turn this season around and be in contention even for the division, which they certainly have the opportunity to do, and potentially win it and get into the playoffs, you're talking about Mike Tomlin as a potential Coach of the Year candidate because of the obstacles they've had to overcome to get there. There's very few teams that have that kind of success, even though you mentioned it with the Panthers and whoever else is playing with their backup quarterback and winning. I can't remember.
Saints, man, they haven't had those same type of injuries.
Teddy Bridgewater is, a former starter that was well thought of. So I kind of give that one less of a
it's not
less of a surprise.
They haven't lost like Kamara or any of the guys like major pieces on defense either. It was basically Drew Brees, and that's it. That really helps.
Yeah, and so it'll be they have opportunities in front of them. The schedule actually is slightly more favorable in the second half to allow them to compete. They got to do their business in the division, which means taking care of the Bengals, the Browns, and potentially that last game in Baltimore. But if they can find a way to pull this season out of the dumpster and into something that is, while maybe not a championship season that we would all like, something that is at least more pretty to look at.
Yeah.
That'll be an impressive job, and it should go a long way to silencing some of the haters and the fire everybody's group. But it's a long way to go yet. And they certainly cannot afford to have any more catastrophic losses along the lines of Ben and Stephon Tuitt.
Oh, no. And again, you're just going to keep doing that, man. It's just,
yep.
They're gonna be back, and we're gonna see who's gonna be practicing, who's limited in that when we get to our next show next week, and we're actually gonna dig into the upcoming schedule a little bit deeper, and also look at around the division. I mean, the Browns are also on a bye here in Week 7 for this weekend. Ravens, who do Ravens have? Seahawks. So we're gonna be keeping our eye on that game. Let's see what happens there. And then there's another team in the division, but I don't think it matters at this point. I think the Bengals, are they mathematically eliminated already at 0-6? I mean, I don't think they are, but they're pretty much on their way out. They get to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. They get them at home. So we'll be looking at those games. We'll talk about those games a little bit. We'll talk about the upcoming schedule and any other news that happens to come up, Steelers-wise over the weekend. I don't look for a whole lot of moves. I don't look for a whole lot of noise or anything else. It's going to be basically just getting healthy and preparing for a not so good Miami Dolphins team that appears that they want the first round pick and the next year's draft. And the Dolphins would probably love nothing more than to, beat the Steelers. And then that pick would they'd have the Steelers pick too, so that actually would help them if they won in a way. But I think they still want that number 1 overall. So it's weird how that turns out, isn't it? They're 0-5. They get the Bills this weekend. They'll probably be 0-6, I would imagine. It depends on what they do with their quarterback and stuff. So we're going to keep an eye on that too. And of course, we'll have the pregame for that Monday Night Football game later next week as well. So Brian, thanks once again, as always, my friend. I know you're getting too old for this stuff, but thanks for joining me.
I'm never too old. I'm young. You're only as old as you feel, and therefore I'm like 5,027 years old.
Wow, that's beyond the Jurassic age, man. I'd call you, I'd call you a dinosaur, but that might be like one of those trilobites or something like that.
I'm a protoboa or whatever they are.
I don't know. I really don't. I'm going to try not to go there because then we're going to lose our minds and everyone's going to zone out if they hadn't already. So Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Please be nice. Please be kind, as Brian would usually say. So we have a few jokesters that are out there, and we'll still take some of your questions and stuff since we are headed into a weekend where there isn't any Steelers football. So we'll have a little bit more time on the next show to address some of that stuff. Until next time, my name is Joe. His name's Brian. We encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.